April 8, 1945, Berlin was collapsing. The war was practically over, and in a quiet, nearly forgotten corner of a dying Reich, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was staring at a truth he had been carrying for 2 years. The document in his hands was not new. The figures were not new. The conclusion had never changed. What had changed was time. This was no longer about whether the report was accurate. That question had been decided long ago. What remained was far more dangerous, whether a man had the courage to finally speak a truth that the Third Reich had declared fatal. Because in Nazi Germany, telling the truth had become indistinguishable from treason. This is the story of a man who knew the outcome of the war before most others, dared to imagine it, a man who understood the cost of saying so, and who waited until the very end to speak plainly. The truth had first arrived on March 17, 1943, Willow Run, a single American factory producing one heavy bomber every hour, around the clock, day and night. 24 aircraft a day from one facility alone. At first, the numbers were shocking. Then the shock hardened into something worse. Certainty. Canaris understood immediately what almost no one else in the German leadership was willing to accept. This was not just production data. This was destiny expressed as mathematics. No speech, no ideology, no act of will could erase what those numbers represented. Germany had already lost. Knowing that, however, and surviving inside Hitler's regime with that knowledge, those were two very different things. By then, Canaris was not a naive man. At 59 years old, he had spent a decade navigating the deadly inner machinery of the Third Reich. As head of military intelligence since 1935, he understood which facts could be cautiously discussed and which facts would get a man destroyed. Willow Run belonged to the second category. When he first shared the intelligence with Hermann Göring, the response told him everything he needed to know. Göring laughed. "Americans don't build airplanes," he scoffed. "They make refrigerators and razor blades." It was the laugh of ideology dismissing reality. Canaris had heard it before. He would hear it again. And he understood precisely what it meant. The leadership was not interested in facts that interfered with belief. Still, he tried. Throughout 1943 and into 1944, his intelligence network kept confirming the same conclusion. German agents, neutral observers, even Japanese naval officers, Germany's own allies, reported with barely concealed disbelief the scale of American industry. Every report confirmed the first. The arithmetic of defeat solidified month by month, but Canaris learned to speak with caution. He shared data without conclusions. He presented facts without spelling out their implications. He told the truth in fragments, carefully trimmed to remain survivable. He walked a narrow line between duty and self-preservation. Other officers who spoke too plainly were removed or vanished. Canaris remained, alive, still in position, but survival came with a cost. As 1944 bled into 1945, the balance shifted. Germany's situation worsened by the day, yet the regime grew more rigid, not more realistic. Military collapse only strengthened Hitler's belief in final victory. Evidence of defeat hardened ideology rather than altering it. Reality and belief had inverted. By early 1945, the illusion was no longer plausible. Soviet troops were advancing through Germany itself. American and British forces tore through the West. The Luftwaffe was gone in all but name. The Wehrmacht was exhausted, undermanned, and outproduced beyond recovery. Everything Canaris had feared was happening exactly as predicted. And now, his own warnings were being noticed. In Hitler's inner circle, realism had become suspicion. Suspicion became accusation. Canaris recognized the pattern. He had seen it destroy others. He had also made enemies. As head of intelligence, he had quietly obstructed Nazi ambitions wherever he could, sheltering resistance figures like Dietrich Bonhoeffer, discouraging Spain from joining the Axis, slowing the machinery of destruction without openly defying it. The SS noticed. After the failed July 20, 1944 assassination attempt on Hitler, the crackdown was inevitable. Investigations spread like wildfire. Names surfaced. Trails converged. Many led directly to the Abwehr. Many led to Canaris. He was arrested that year. Not executed, not freed, just moved, interrogated, held while the regime itself began to unravel. By April 1945, Berlin was surrounded. Hitler awaited death in his bunker, and Canaris found himself at Flossenburg concentration camp knowing his end was inevitable. What remained was one final choice. Should he finally say everything? Not with careful phrasing, not with bureaucratic caution, but clearly, plainly, without hedging. Should he tell the story as it truly was, that Germany had not lost because of weak will or betrayal or fate, but because it was industrially overwhelmed, mathematically outmatched beyond recovery? That Nazi leadership had been warned, informed, given accurate intelligence, and deliberately rejected it. That catastrophe was not inevitable. It was chosen. Speaking now would change nothing. The war was ending regardless. But silence would complete a lifetime of compromise, and that realization haunted him. Canaris had spent his career calculating risk, choosing survival, maintaining position. It had kept him alive, but it had demanded quiet compliance. Each softened report, each unspoken conclusion had allowed the lie to live a little longer. Bonhoeffer had once written that silence in the face of evil was itself participation. Only now did Canaris fully understand the truth of that idea. In his final days, he chose clarity. He spoke to fellow prisoners. He spoke without defensive language or professional distance. He explained Willow Run not as a statistic, but as a verdict. He named decisions, named consequences, named responsibility. It was treason by Nazi definition, and he knew exactly what would follow. On April 9, 1945, Admiral Wilhelm Canaris was executed at Flossenburg. He was stripped naked, slowly strangled with piano wire, a brutal death for a man who had spent his life trying to survive within a brutal system without surrendering his conscience. His words changed nothing in the war's outcome, but they changed the record. After the war, his diaries surfaced. His reports were examined. Testimony confirmed what he had known, and when he had known it, history revealed something crucial. The Nazi leadership had not been ignorant. They had chosen ideology over reality and paid the price. Canaris never lacked intelligence. What he lacked until the end was freedom, and in those final hours, with nothing left to lose, his integrity finally matched his knowledge. That choice mattered, because the greatest danger is not ignorance. Ignorance can be corrected. The greatest danger is knowing the truth and choosing not to act on it. That is how institutions collapse. That is how disasters unfold. Not through blindness, but through silence. In the end, Wilhelm Canaris chose to speak. It cost him his life, but it preserved his truth.